And good afternoon, everyone. Phil Penarski here with the News 8 Live Desk. Hope you're having a great Wednesday so far. Digital reporter Matt Jaworowski is back today as we dive into the fourth part of his digital series on the POW camps during World War II here in the state of Michigan. And as a reminder to everyone, this is a 5-part series. The first 4 parts are now available to you over on our website, woodtv.com. And that 5th and final part will be debuting this Sunday over on our website as well. So be sure to check that out. But Matt, thanks for being here. Obviously, very excited to talk about this one. We've enjoyed all the previous 3 stories that kind of went into a lot more detail about this part of history that some people, myself included, were not familiar with. But this story, you kind of went a different route. You took a little bit of a different turn, a little bit of a different topic on this one.
Yeah, I went a little wider scope with this story. Basically, what I found is in the bulk of my research, learning about these POW camps that we had here in the States and the efforts to try to house these European soldiers humanely and the differences between how Allied soldiers were treated overseas. I picked up on a lot of these smaller stories. It's kind of something that you see almost as a trend, is the more you learn of war is not typically a black and white concept. We look at it, especially now that we're decades removed from it, as and from one side of it as good guys versus the bad guys, and you kind of learn that those labels tend to really be overarching. And so even like from last week when we learned about a man, Ernst Fluter, who was a German soldier, how in our eyes, history books, he would be considered a bad guy, but when you really understand his story, that really doesn't appear to be the case. And so I focus on the respect and the compassion that can still be seen even throughout a obviously horrible and bloody war. And I really pulled out 3 examples here in Michigan that kind of just illustrate that point, and hopefully to really drive that home, to understand there's a lot more depth to what's happening than what we see just in history books today.
Right now, and I, again, highly encourage everybody to check out this piece in particular because Matt does a really great job of taking these 3 different stories and kind of weaving them together, and they're all really just powerful stories no matter which way you look at it. The gray area, I think, was a great way to kind of emphasize and kind of describe this piece because, as you mentioned, it's not black and white. There are gray areas when it comes to events like World War II. But I got to ask about these 3 different stories and kind of trying to dive a little bit more into them. Was that sort of, I guess, kind of the reasoning behind wanting to take a look at this? Maybe you heard about these stories during your research and thought that, you know, this was, maybe it even opened up your eyes a little bit more to kind of that concept.
Right. So I talked to someone who I would consider an expert in this topic. His name is Greg Sumner. He's a professor at University of Detroit Mercy, who literally wrote the book on Michigan's POW camps. So speaking to him, he turned me on to 2 of these stories, which are kind of well known as far as people who live in those circles. But talking about the 26 German POWs that died here in Michigan while they were in while they were POWs, and that there's a memorial at Fort Custer Cemetery, which I think is something that people who may have visited, may know about. It's a very simple setting. It blends right in with the rest of the cemetery, but it's just one subtle way to honor these men who, yes, they're fighting for the other side, but their lives deserve to be honored as well. We also have the Lamoureux brothers, which is personally one of my favorite stories. Really just comes down to just even some of the simple quotes that were pulled out. The Lamoureux were a family in Sparta, and you can read more about this in the story. Basically 3 brothers, all of whom died fighting overseas. And once the boys in the POW camp right across the street from the Lamoureux home saw that blue star turn gold, that last one, they kind of went out of their way to acknowledge and salute Alice Lamoureux, their mom, and kind of show some compassion and respect. There's thing that we know he's fighting for one side or we're considered on the other, but we show respect to anyone who's willing to make that sacrifice for their country.
Right. No, and again, those were just the first two stories. That third story, I mean, that really got me kind of
Yeah.
at the end. Again, we don't want to give too much away. We want everybody to go out and read this story because in its entirety, it really does just kind of give you a new perspective on a whole bunch of different things. But that last story in particular really hit me home. Matt, is that kind of the same thing? Just seeing how people sort of reacted to, the German soldiers that sort of reacted to all the things that they were seeing after the war and how they decided to really help out.
Right. There's a lot that is kind of hard to make sense of at this time, but basically, most of the German soldiers over here didn't really understand and didn't know exactly what was going on back home, especially the ones that had been held in camps for a long time. So part of the deal after the war is that all these POWs had to be kind of educated and shown video from that they've gathered at all these different camps and of the Holocaust, to kind of show like, hey, just so you guys know, this happened. This was you. And most of them were horrified and didn't understand what was going on, didn't know that was happening. And so some of the POWs themselves actually worked together and put together a collection drive. We've talked about how they were able to work during their time as POWs and save up scrip, and eventually that converts to cash once the camps are closed, something that they can bring home and kind of start to rebuild their lives. Every penny is important at that point, and some of the POWs gave out of their savings and raised more than $10,000 for the Red Cross, just to some gesture, something that they could do to say we're sorry, and to say that, as much as we wish we were not affiliated with this in any way, what else can we do? But here's a sign of sign of apology and a sign of, there is still some humanity here. So a lot of details packed into those stories, a lot of really cool visuals too. You're seeing one of the monuments for the Lamoureux brothers. That's Lamoureux Park out in Sparta. A nice little park there. They also have a monument to the other soldiers there. But stories to check out, stories to gain a little more depth on a really interesting, important subject.
Right now, and I think we can all agree that this series itself is pretty somber. I mean, you're talking about
Sure.
World War II, POW camps, and this story in particular I felt was probably one of the more somber editions so far that we've seen. But, there is still another part that is coming up this Sunday. Matt, can you give us a little bit of a sneak peek into what is going to be happening in that part?
Yeah, a little twist in this one too, but somber doesn't mean it's not interesting. There's a lot of great stuff in there. The last part is actually going to focus on kind of one of the most notorious incidents that happened at a Michigan POW camp. We talk about how there are a handful of escape attempts, POWs trying to escape, and how most of them were fruitless. Almost all of them were fruitless, and some hilariously so, including some that are included in this story. But one of them actually got some pretty ugly traction, and they're actually two young women on the east side of the state who nearly faced treason charges, nearly faced the death penalty for their role in helping two POWs escape a camp. So some pretty spellbinding stuff. Definitely stirred up a lot of headlines back in 1944, so hopefully you guys will check it out on Sunday.
Yeah, no, definitely looking forward to that one, as we have throughout this entire series. Matt, thank you so much for stopping by. I do want to remind everybody that fifth part that Matt just teased is going to be coming out over on our website, woodtv.com. That's the only place you're going to be able to find it. That is coming up Sunday morning. But you can also check out all four parts, including this latest part that came out this past Sunday, right now, simply by heading on over to our website, woodtv.com. Matt, one last time, thank you so much for stopping by. We'll see you next week.
Always, thank you.
Of course, I want to thank everybody else for tuning into this latest edition of the News 8 Live Desk. I'm Phil Penarski, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.